So, now Chris and I are between you and the break and the end of the day and our closing. But I think this conversation is, you would agree with me that it's a very important conversation to have, because we're going to have to bring all of this, all of the conversation in the last 2 days to so what. And so what, if I remember, our first day, it's all about making a difference in the world, and specifically in global health, and more broadly in global development. And so what we would like to do in this last conversation with Chris is to look at the bigger picture, look at the trends, and just better understand the context in which we operate. To do that, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Chris Elias, who is the President for Global Development at the Foundation, at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Some of you who've attended the Micro Lab had a chance to listen to him talk a little bit about technology and so forth. But given Chris's very broad portfolio at the foundation, we couldn't have a better person to really tackle this subject with us. So Chris, welcome, and thank you for joining us at SwitchPoint. Maybe to get us started, to think about global development in general, what can you tell us about current trends? What is it that the SwitchPoint community should be paying attention to in global development these days?
Thanks, Bob. First, it's just been great to be here today. Sorry I got here a bit late because of the weather, but it's really, the energy's great. And I was thinking, the last few sessions, we had these young people up here standing up, dancing around, and they had you and I sit down.
I know.
Because we've been in development a long time. And, what I think is actually part of the trend is what, listening to the conversations and being in the labs today, we take for granted today wasn't how it was 10 or 15 years ago. And I think there are 3 mega trends that have brought us to where we are today, and part of what I think we need to capture is how we go forward. So one of the 3 things I'd say changed in the last 10 to 15 years, and we're riding that momentum. One is that the world kind of woke up to the importance of investing in global health and development. When you started, we would do lots of little projects. And we would, the final paragraph of the report was always the same. It said, we really feel excited about the promise of this approach, and if anyone ever put any political will and money into it, we could scale it up and make a big difference. That was sort of the standard closing paragraph of most global health and development reports. Well, over the last 15 years, many people, the Gates Foundation, many other foundations, most importantly, the overseas development assistance from the rich world, and as importantly, increased domestic expenditures by many, not all, unfortunately, countries in the poor world have been investing in health and development. And we've begun to see that flywheel of progress speed up. That's been one important megatrend. We have to, particularly in this difficult environment, figure out how we tell the story so that those budgets don't get cut. They're all under, some of them are sequestered and others are in danger. And so the kinds of energy and stories we've heard today are very important. Second megatrend is that we've completely blurred the line between nonprofit and business. So, and we've seen that most in the explosion of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. People describe these wonderful projects and you don't know whether they're a for-profit, a non-profit, a mixed profit, how their business model. We've learned to take the smart, sustainable ideas from business and put them into nonprofit social ventures. And we've learned to take the heart and soul that's been in the nonprofit community and put it into business increasingly. So we've blurred that line. So sometimes we confuse ourselves, which I think is a good thing. And the third thing, the mega trend, and it was very evident today, has been the explosion of interest in energy among youth. 15 years ago, as you know, there were maybe 5 universities that had global health and development programs. There are now 100, I'm told. Here in the Triangle, Duke is starting the first undergraduate major in global health. At the University of Washington in Seattle, we have a global health department. It's the largest department in the School of Public Health. So there is now a tremendous vital interest. At the University of Washington, when they started that program, it was originally a graduate program, and the undergraduates basically petitioned the president of the university to say, hey, we're interested too. You need to develop programs for the undergraduates. So, given the interest and the energy, given the blurring of these lines of traditional for-profit, nonprofit work, and given the political and financial commitments that have come, we've begun to see important changes. We've seen, we're not going to meet the Millennium Development Goals in every country, but we're going to meet them many places. And we've cut under 5 child mortality has been cut in half in the last 20 years. Maternal mortality, again, we won't hit the 75% reduction target, but we're going to get close to half. Yep. So tremendous progress, and yet some storm clouds on the horizon. So
as the world is waking up to the uptake of global health, who in your eyes are new players? You see some new players coming into this space?
Well, I think, some of what I've already mentioned. I mean, the energy, the lab I was in, there was again, some of the ideas, some of the, I went this afternoon to see Clement's, thing on the Reinvent the Toilet, since yes. Part of the Global Development Program at the Gates Foundation supports that, and 50 others in those sort of grand challenge experiments to try and come up with a toilet that could meet the needs of the 2.5 billion people who don't have access to adequate sanitation today. And we're doing it through very disruptive innovation models, as Clement showed us down by the river as he was electrolyzing various liquids. So there's that kind of energy. 15 years ago, you wouldn't have known how to get an engineer from Caltech interested in global health, right? Where would they have fit into IntraHealth or in PATH, my old organization? So I think the other thing we've done is we've opened up the field and welcomed in energy and entrepreneurship from every kind of, you can get an MBA, you can get an MPH, you can get an engineering degree, you can go be an astrophysicist and figure out how to apply it to global health.
Yeah. On the subject of the blurring between the nonprofit sector and the private sector, I would imagine, well, I can tell you that there are tremendous opportunities, but there are also challenges, I would imagine, as you look at the business model. Because at IntraHealth, I know that we're trying to see what is the approach. How can we truly partner with the private sector to do? Because I think we've been accustomed to a certain way of working. So any comments you want to share on that, as I'm sure the foundation puts some attention into public-private partnership. So what challenges and what opportunities?
Yeah, I think you've got a particular set of challenges at IntraHealth. And all the international NGOs have this. Yeah. Until 15 months ago, I was, like you, the CEO of an international NGO doing work in global health. And there's a couple of challenges. One is how to partner with private for-profit sector partners who can bring considerable resources. One of the things we were doing at PATH just as I left was figuring out how to work with some of the extractive industries who have a genuine interest, and in fact, through the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, have said that they will reinvest in the communities where they have extraction operations like mines and oil, et cetera. So there's resources that are being returned to those countries and communities, and yet those partnerships bring significant reputational risk because they're in a very risky business. As we were talking about working with some mining companies, says, well, one of my staff said, well, we could probably work with them, but we'd never want to work with BP. Because that was what was going on in the Gulf at the time. I said, well, 20 years ago, you would have said we'd never work with Exxon, and yet Exxon's funding our malaria program. So, it's like, how do you make that assessment? And how does a nonprofit avoid giving away its brand equity and its reputation and lending credibility? Some companies are really just in it for the PR. Others are really in it for, sort of the mid-ground is the corporate social responsibility, and the further, end of the spectrum is the sustainability. Some companies are really thinking about how they make sustainability part of their business model. Those are the companies you really want to try and work with. But trying to figure out the motivations is challenging along the way. The second thing I'd say, though, for international NGOs like IntraHealth is that you're going to have to, I would predict, I was predicting this at PATH when I was there, reinvent your business model over the next 5 to 10 years as you succeed, right? So things we've wanted for 25 years have begun to happen. Governments are stepping up and owning their national programs and funding their national programs more. We're building local capacity. I mean, you run the capacity project, right? So you're part of the problem in the sense that you're working yourself out of a job, right?
That's correct.
The IntraHealth model of 10 years ago will not be the IntraHealth model of 10 years from now, because you're going to have much stronger national organizations. And your role is going to have to get more focused on what is the value add of, in terms of technical assistance, in terms of training. You're going to be more of an enabler than you are a doer. And that's a good thing. That's what we've been trying to do for a long time. But that's going to require changes in what you do in your operating model. And it's also going to require that groups like the Gates Foundation, other funders, recognize that shift and that we don't hold on to an old funding model where we try to squeeze every penny of overhead so that you, so we're going to have to shift. The funders and the international NGOs are going to have more of a strategic partnership in understanding how this model is going to evolve, because given this progress, it is going to have to change.
It is. Would you say that the same, though, would be true as you're looking at individual people who just want to make a difference? What's going to be my role as a U.S. citizen sitting here in the United States, have some expertise that I want to bring, and how am I going to make sure that I don't take the job of some national who could do it, or,
That's part of the challenge. The one great thing is it's a lot easier to get into global health and development now than it was when you and I started.
That's right.
That you can be, kind of working, doing something, and then on the weekends with your website, you can be setting up, collaborating with people, given the connectivity, given the technology, given some of the innovation we saw today, you can be, engaged with people across the world in interesting and exciting ways, and you can put together in some ways a portfolio of engagements. The idea that you have to work for one organization on one project is an old idea. So there's more flexibility, but at the same time, that means there's not a clear recognition of a path, right? So you might do this for a while, and it's shifting. It's constantly shifting. And the center of control is shifting more and more to countries and communities. And that's going to be an interesting shift and challenge for many people who are used to a more charitable model of global development.
Exactly. Let me just advance. I'm getting signal here to speed it up. I wanted to talk about specifically, because you've done this. You were a global health expert. You ran an organization that focused on global health. And then now in your new responsibilities, you're shifting to the broader global development, which I think is really the aspiration of this audience, is that how do we transcend just the sector we're in, because what we really want to embrace is the broader global development agenda. So what can you tell us about your personal experience with that transition where now you're responsible for not just global health, but agriculture and financial services for the poor. So you're really looking at the big picture of global development. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so when I took my current job 15 months ago and people said, you're going to be responsible for agricultural development, you thought a hybrid was a car, right? But what the shift is, so coming, I have a pretty big health portfolio, but also agricultural development, the water and sanitation, revent the toilet challenge, and our financial services portfolio. And what I found is exactly what the innovation literature shows, which is that the best ideas are at the boundaries of communities. So just in 15 months, we can see, like our financial services team, which is all about getting poor people financial services that will give them resilience, did an analysis and said, the problem with money is actually money, right? It's expensive to carry around, it's unsafe, et cetera, and that if we're really going to get financial services to the poorest of the poor, the people living on less than $1.25 a day, we've got to go digital. And given the installed base of mobile telephony, it's time. We can do that. So they were pursuing their financial services strategy about how do we build the digital rails for money transfer, and then savings, and then insurance, and then credit, et cetera. And as they started to do that, the ag program said, hey, wait a minute, half of the fertilizer subsidies in most sub-Saharan African countries leak before they get to the smallholder farmer. Let's work together. In fact, if we can build the digital rails for some of these government-to-people payments, which are some of the biggest financial transfers in the poor countries, whether it's fertilizer subsidies, whether it's payments to frontline health workers, the collaboration now, so you've got a financial services team that's building the rails, and then you've got an ag team that wants to ride those rails to get smallholder farmers agricultural fertilizer subsidies without getting ripped off, and give them the voucher that gives them the purchasing power so they don't go and collect it and they get a bag of fertilizer, it's half sand. Same with health payments. Somebody was telling me earlier today that when some of the health workers got paid, they said, hey, we got a raise. They said, well, no, that's actually always been your salary. It's just that people ripped off of it before it got to you.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so there's a tremendous amount of innovation at the boundaries between health, agriculture, financial services, others, as you would expect. I mean, that's what the tech community's been telling us for 30 years. That's what we experienced in some of our work at PATH. And I'm just seeing it even more. So I'm having a great time learning about other kinds of hybrids.
Wonderful. We couldn't finish this conversation without talking about technology. And those of you who attended this morning heard Chris say that they Bill Gates certainly talks about having some biases toward technology. So tell us, there's really the promise that technology is going to help us leapfrog? I think we're banking so much on it. We've heard so much about it here today. Yeah, tell us, you see technology, the role of technology in international development, global development.
Sure, I'm a technology enthusiast. I was the CEO of the Program for Appropriate Technology in Health for 12 years. So it's an easy question in some ways. But one of the things I learned doing that was that technology is not a magic bullet, right? We deal with very complex things, nutrition, food systems. These are complex phenomena. We're not going to solve them with magic bullets. That the people, the systems, the culture in which technology is brought to innovation, is brought to people, is as important as the technology itself. And I think we've seen that. And there's certainly huge opportunity to leapfrog, all right? Look at what vaccines have done. Look at what, having affordable medicines has done. Look at the, HIV 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, 5% of people in sub-Saharan Africa that needed treatment were on treatment. Today it's over half. It's still only about half. So huge, what used to be a death sentence, people are now healthy and living, and productive. So technology can make a huge difference, but it only makes a difference if developed and designed with the end user in mind. I mean, the MIT folks, we're talking about that user-driven, user-centered design is critical to developing things people actually use. Designing for affordability is absolutely essential, especially in tight budget times, but actually all the time. And, you know, I think thinking about when you're designing and inventing, thinking about scale from the start. How is this going to look when we put this into, you know, the example I gave this morning is you develop a new vaccine and it's literally packaged so that it's too big to fit in the refrigerator. That's not a success, right? You got to design for the system that's going to bring the technological innovation to the user, and you got to design with the user's engagement, otherwise they won't use it.
Well, what I've heard from Chris is helping me confirm what we said the first day, that it seems like these terms that we're hearing, innovation, integration, you know, partnership, these are not just words that we're using. It's really a focus that I think is being created because that's the times we're in this global development. So would you agree with me that those who are going to succeed in the next generation of global development would be those like the SwitchPoint community that are going to have a broad perspective on things, that are going to ready to take risk, and that are going to be ready to try out things that they have not tried out in the past?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, yes, I agree. And it's, you know, when I started my first day of medical school, I remember the dean got up and said, half of what we're going to teach you is wrong. We just don't know what half it is. And he was right, actually. And the thing is, today, knowledge grows so fast that you can't just be a substance matter expert for more than a couple of months, right? You got to be able to know how to find energy, how to find information, find more than information because there's too much of that. You find knowledge, and the way you find knowledge is to use networks that can help you filter the information so that you can go out and get solutions when you're faced with new problems in an evolving environment, which is where we are. So I think that it's not just the next generation. I think actually our generation succeeds by connecting globally, by thinking outside of the usual disciplinary boundaries. I think those are the skills of tomorrow, whether you're in global health and development or in any other field, really. And that's, I think, another good thing is that we've opened it up. It's no longer a specialized few or a strange few who want to do this work. It's actually a very broad group of people. You know, I've got people on my staff who come in and out of the business world, bring, you know, cutting-edge business and technology skills, leave to go back to that. I mean, the career of the new generation is going to be much more diverse than our careers were. So.
Thank you. Well, join me in thanking Chris for definitely adding his very valuable perspective in our discussion. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Pop. I just want to give a shout out to Grace and Owen and Megan who came to pick me up. Megan just turned 6 last week.
Oh,
so maybe we can give her a round of applause.
Good. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Thank you so much.